So I try to typically choose like lower profile volumes, so the volumes will go on first. Then we do the bigger holds, and then nice. That
Oh God,
the whiskey was good, that one. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I just just put Drano down my throat. Or maybe Green Goblin because it's organic.
There you
Oh
go.
my God.
Check it out.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to Sends and Suffers podcast. I am your host, Mario Stanley. Happy freaking New Year. I hope everyone had a wonderful holiday, an amazing New Year. I hope you got all the things you wanted, all the things you needed, and maybe some of the things that you didn't really want, but you definitely need in your life. We all know those times of growth, and let's just put 21 behind us and move forward to 2022. It's going to be a punch, but we're resilient. We're climbers. We're outdoor adventurous. We're enthusiasts. We are people who just go after it. Before we get into our guest today, I want to make sure you guys know that we are a part of Plugtone Audio. It is a collaboration of awesome podcasts, Power Company, Switchback, Not Your Average Climber, Breaking Beta, and the American Climbing Project. All of us have joined forces together, and, we're kind of just getting together, morphing, doing our thing, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. I'm a Voltron fan personally myself, but we won't get into that right now. But if you guys haven't had a chance, please go to plugtoneaudio.com and check out all of the cruise stuff. I think you will like the variety. It is like going into a black person's spice cabinet. You will find a wide variety of shit for everyone. My guest today is Ellis Whitson. Originally hailing from Maryland, Ellis has been in the climbing community for well over a decade. And he has coached in Maryland, rock climbed in the Red, climbed in Waco, experienced outdoor climber, has been coaching and route setting for years. And Ellis moved down to Texas a while back, and we got to know each other at work. And I had recently learned that he was jumping ship and moving on to Salt Lake. So I wanted to take an opportunity to really just talk to him and introduce you guys to someone who has become definitely a DFW staple in the coaching and climbing community, and kind of just let you guys get to know him. We nerd out about route setting, about climbing, a little bit about whiskey, but we'll get there. And I'm really excited to introduce you guys Ellis Whitson, DFW local. So without further ado, let's get into this.
Check it out.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Sends and Suffers podcast. I have no idea what episode this is because I don't really pay attention to that anyway. I just kind of hang out with
9,000.
Yeah, 9,584. So we're hanging out. We're here in Dallas, Texas. I am hanging out with my buddy Ellis. I'm going to let him introduce himself. So who are you, where you're from, and what is your connection to the great outdoors, rock climbing, or whatever the hell you do?
Who am I? My name's Ellis Whitson. I'm originally from Maryland, a little place called Mechanicsville, which is in southern Maryland, middle of nowhere. I currently live in Dallas for about 3 more days, and then I'm moving to Salt Lake City. I have been here for about 8 years, though. So I've been in the industry here for, 8 years, in the climbing industry for 15, 16 years, something like that. So quite a while. It's kind of the only real career I would have, I would say. I'm a coach, a route setter, climber. Hopefully more of a climber now that I'm moving out of Dallas. We'll see. But
good luck.
Yeah, we'll see. I guess that's my deal.
Yeah, I didn't realize you and I have been in the industry almost in the same amount of time. I'd actually, just hearing you say that now, that dawned on me. When you said Mechanicsville, you said Maryland. I was like, oh shit, I didn't realize. I thought you were going to say Mechanicsville, Virginia, because there's the same thing.
I think there's probably a couple. Yeah, I think there's a Pennsylvania one as well. It seems like that's an old industrial town that's common on the East Coast.
Maybe it was like where all the blacksmiths were. I don't know. I don't know. I'm thinking colonial here. That's like my mindset. But hell yeah. So you and I met basically 8 years ago?
Yeah, you were actually the first person I met at Summit.
Oh yes. We have to tell this story. Come on.
Well, I don't remember exactly what you said, but I showed up to Texas to route set, and it was I think it was a Sunday night.
Yeah.
I used to set Sunday nights late. And I didn't know who I was looking for besides some guy named Chris, he was the head route setter at the time and one of the owners of the gym, and I was told to look for him. So I came into the gym and asked for Chris and the other route setters, and the guy at the front desk was like, "Oh, I don't know, they're over there, go find them." And you were the first person I actually saw and talked to. I asked you, who Chris was, where he was, if I could talk to him, meet to him. I think you told me to say some terrible slur about Italians or something to yell at him.
I told you to call him a Sicilian. No, he is Sicilian.
He is Sicilian, but you told me I don't remember what exactly.
Is the slur? It's terrible. And I just want to give the caveat. I believe in racial equality. I believe in justice for all, but I love a really good racist joke. And
it was a simpler time.
It was a very it was a simpler time. Man, what was that? I keep on thinking of Jersey Shore and like Guido, and that's what I'm thinking of right now. But
I don't remember what it was, but I just remember I panicked because I was just, this was my first day at work, and I was like, I don't know if I should yell a racial slur at my boss on day one. It seems like
go for it,
bad form, but
yeah, he would have known it was from. He would have immediately known. He was like, "So you met Mario?"
Yeah. Well, fortunately, he would have. I learned later he would have been cool with that, but yeah. Anyway.
Oh man, yeah, and then we sat and then worked, and you've been basically coaching the team and managing it. You kind of done. I think you've done a little bit of everything.
Yeah, I've done. I mean, it's always been kind of centered around coaching and route setting, but yeah, I got hired to come out and run part of the program out of one of the gyms in Dallas, starting one of the kids clubs programs there, coaching with a competitive team and doing route setting. So in the beginning, it was, a classic scenario of a 60-hour work week all the time and, trying to cram literally everything in. And, I did variations of that for about 8 years here. Some of it was managing facilities. I did a little bit of managing the Carrollton facility after that kind of got shut down from the tornado a couple years ago. We revamped it, turned it into a training center.
Yeah.
And we reopened that as a team-specific training center. So I managed that facility and was also in charge of the route setting and the programming out of that place.
Yeah. And then where were you at before? Were you just climbing in the red before you came to Texas, or were you coaching somewhere else?
Well, I mean, I was kind of vagabond for, a few months before I came here, but I was working for Earth Treks for a long time in Rockville, Columbia, all around Maryland in that area. At that point, they only had 3 locations. Yeah, they had Timonium, Columbia, and Rockville.
Yeah.
And I was the head coach for all those locations at that point.
Oh, nice. Yeah. And they have like 5 or 6 now, I think.
Yeah, they have 1,000 now, I guess. Since they're merged, there's,
the
El Cap dynasty.
Oh, they are in the El Cap dynasty.
Yep.
Along with Movement moving in here. So who does the El Cap dynasty own?
So it's Movement and Planet Granite and Earth Treks.
Yeah, so that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Correct. Do you know the story of those guys? Because I was told that they were just old dirtbagger, not dirtbaggers, but they were old like Yosemite climbers that were just happened to be involved in real estate in LA, and they just happened to come into money. I don't know if that's like an urban legend or a myth.
I don't know a lot about Planet Granite. I mean, I know Earth Treks started as a guiding company. So Chris Warner is a famous mountaineer. He started Earth Treks in the early -- in Maryland, and it was just a guiding company they would do, Kilimanjaro and South America, all over the place. I mean, it started as that. They built a gym in the mid '90s, the way that a lot of people did, because they wanted to climb somewhere when the weather was bad and somewhere to train. And then it just sort of blossomed from there.
Yeah. Fair enough. Oh, well, I'm gonna have to do research on the El Cap dynasty because I don't understand how those guys they've just swallowed everything.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, they were the first ones that I know of to merge at that level. I mean, I know there's been some other gyms that have acquired smaller gyms before that.
Yeah, but they're more of a Earthtreks is more. I mean, sorry, the El Cap, the brand is more of a conglomerate. That's how I look at them because they're just basically swallowing up any gym. And I don't know if this part is true or not, but I know they bought these major chains that have been successful. And then I don't know this to be sure, but they've bought smaller gyms and just acquired their inventory or acquired different things from them.
Yeah. I'm not 100% sure on how that process worked, but it seemed like they merged those three companies to spread their influence all over the U.S. I guess, and yeah, seems to be working for them. They're still building a lot of gyms. There's two coming in Dallas now. I think two in Chicago that are about to open as well.
They have more money than God.
I'm sure they have a big plan. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they'll eventually own it all, unless someone comes in.
Globo Gym.
Oh, it is going to be. Oh, Globo Gym. That's what that needs to happen. They need to start a climbing dodgeball team. If they finally own everything, if they don't start a dodgeball team and everything, and it has to be called Cobra.
Is it going to be climbing and dodgeball? Like a combined sport? We're going to create a new...
Yeah, why not? I mean, we technically used to play a game in kids club called wall ball. And I mean, this was, you could do this back in Dallas, the old D-Rocks, which is now Summit Dallas and Dallas Rocks back in the day, homage. But we used to play this game called wall ball, and we would deflate a soccer ball, and the kids had to go up and catch the ball and then shoot it in a laundry hamper that we would put a couple cloths in so it would stay, and we set them at different places, and they would be worth different points.
Yeah.
And we would play wall ball at Dallas all the time. Well, the side note is the coaches would be pegging the crap out of the kids while they're on the wall.
Yeah, naturally.
And, I mean, I never did it intentionally. I'm sure a few of you kids listening to this know I nailed you in the head a couple times, and I'm very sorry. It was never done in malicious intent at all.
Yeah, maybe a little malicious.
You know who you are. But yeah, that's but the theory has been done. It does work.
All right. Well, you
Yeah,
heard it here first.
how would that work?
Pioneering.
Though? Yeah, you throw the ball, you dodge it. What if you dodge it, bounce off the wall, you catch it, and then you have to hit the person? I think it would be cool to add in points or hoops, kind of like Harry Potter, where they got to throw it through the hoops.
Mm-hmm.
If you add that into there, it would be a next level game.
Well, there's still time to add in a new discipline for 2024 Olympics. So,
oh my God.
Start your pitch now.
That was watching people who have no business, who have never speed climbed, was a shit show.
It was interesting. It was maybe not the best representation of our sport in that regard, but I think generally speaking, I was actually pretty happy with it.
I think it went well.
Yeah, I think it went well. I think it could have gone
better.
It could have gone better, but it could have been a disaster in terms of some small things with the route setting that could have caused a disaster in some ways. I think.
So
but I think it was good overall.
I want to circle back up on that, but I guess I want to give this caveat for anyone listening. So if you are not a climber, or you are not, there's kind of the best way I can say this is you start there's different levels, different stages here. And so, if you're just an everyday gym grower, you buy a day pass, or you're just someone who saw the Olympics, it all looks cool to you. If you are a novice climber and you have a membership and you've never really climbed outside and you're still wearing rental shoes, it all look great to you. If you are, and let's just skip all the other people in between that. If you are someone who buys climbing shoes and actually resoles them to save money because you're always trying to get new rope, new gear because you thrash everything, and you understand how to manage your... and you actually understand how to use a hangboard and get your fingers strong, then you might have cringed a few times. I'm going to go ahead
Sure. Yeah. I think the more...
the
Yes.
more you were just kind of ugh.
I would say more criticism came from, the more in-depth and knowledgeable crowd.
Oh.
But, some of that is just... A lot of it was, criticism about the commentary, which I get, if you're a climber. Some of it was pretty cringeworthy. But... Yeah. When you look at it from the perspective of they're trying to talk to an audience that has never seen climbing, perhaps.
Yeah, no,
So-
I mean, my personal opinion, they should have just let Megan have it because I think Megan does a really good job of simplifying it for everyone. Megan Margot, for those of you guys who don't know her, she does a really good job of simplifying it, but then still keeping it entertaining enough for climbers to listen to because, I don't know, I think she just does a good job.
I'm sorry, Megan Martin, yes.
Yeah, Megan Martin. Oh, did I say Margot? Megan
Yeah,
Martin.
I saw some clips that had her commentating, but it seemed like either I was watching the wrong channel or maybe it was just
I think
commentating on replays and whatnot. But I wish that I had seen coverage with her.
I'm pretty confident she was just basically giving all the recaps and that's it because, you know, I think she just does a masterful job of really telling people like, okay, this is what you're seeing, but then also giving climbers less information because we can fill in the gaps ourselves.
Yeah, sure.
And I think that's like the part. Like the other guys were just like, we don't need a play-by-play.
Yeah, yeah.
You know. Oh my God. All right, moving on. But yeah, I'm waiting for the rest. I'm waiting for the next bomb of memes to drop on this one, our audio clips. You know, actually, you kind of mentioned the route setting, and I would kind of like to hear your thoughts on that because you've been setting for a while. You've set at multiple different levels. And we'll leave the Olympics alone after this, and we'll just move on.
Whatever you want to talk about.
I'll talk shit all day. But like, what do you think was that could have gone disastrous with the route setting? Like, I think that's an interesting comment.
Well, I mean, the biggest thing that I worried about beforehand was honestly that the route setting might be too easy. Fortunately, it was not. You know, but I was worried that there might be maybe too much pressure in some ways on the route setters to have the good show, you know, have lots of tops, have things that are exciting. You know, if things are too hard for a layman, perhaps it can seem like no one's getting off the ground or they're all falling on the same move. And I think I've heard criticism from non-climbers watching our sport before that with bouldering sometimes they're not really certain who's winning because if the boulder is very hard, if everyone's falling on a specific move, not making progress, they don't really understand, you know, that they are struggling and maybe they are making progress little by little, but they don't really understand it and see it because
it's the nuance in a sport. It's funny.
I was happy actually happy that they did not do that. I was pleasantly surprised that they took risks in this. You know, I think there was some criticism about some of the routes. Some of the boulders, I'm sorry, being a little bit too hard. But for me personally, I would always rather them be harder than easier.
Yeah, always.
I just prefer that personally. It's somewhat of a, you know, philosophical question of who's chiefing the event and who's in charge of it to make that decision about the level of the boulders and whether they want things to feel harder, easier.
Yeah.
But I was really happy that they took risks, you know, especially in the women's field. There's a tendency to set for Yanya, which is a double-edged sword in a lot of ways, I think. You know, when she's on, she's obviously head and shoulders above everyone else. And, you know, it could have been, if they had only set for her, for instance, it could have been quite boring to watch the other climbers on there.
Yeah.
The other aspect of having, you know, speed climbers in the combined final too is also a wild card because you have situations where, you know, certain climbers, I think the French climber, Anouk, she did quite well, I thought, overall. She's a speed specialist, but I thought generally she did well on the boulders, which was nice. It was good to see that. In the men's category, we didn't really have any speed specialists, unless I'm completely going blank right now in finals, because we would have with Bassa, but with the bicep injury, him being out, which was tragic and horrifying to watch at the same time, by the way. But yeah, I think in general, I was really happy with the route setting at the Olympics. There's always things you can nitpick about, but I think that they did a very good job of setting a diverse set of boulders, and they were hard, and they should have been. You know,
yeah, I agree with you.
The most elite climbers in the world, and you know.
Yeah, and for people listening, the reason why, and we both agree, err on the side of harder than easier, because the worst thing at a maybe more junior level, what you see happen in gyms is you get these 3 or 4 way or 5 way ties, and then there has to be a climb off. in order to break it off. And that's like the worst thing you want to happen. It's like, it's very unprofessional. At the end of the day, it's just like people, you would rather err on it being too hard than asking, then people are like, wait a minute, what's happening? I don't understand why this is happening. Why are they climbing this random route that the boys climbed? Why are they why are they changing this route to do this? And then, it turns into this whole thing. And so for the layman listening to this, that is why, and I would just call it a rule of thumb. Like, you always err on the side of a little too hard, because the last thing you want is a tie. And as you said, if you know who you're setting for, there's always wild cards, but at the same time, you can always break, you can break the scoring down by what hole did they get, possession, movement towards a hole. There's all these little things that we can break it down with. But if everybody tops, it's like, you can't fix that.
Yeah. I think the Olympics in particular, too, there was obviously an added level of stress that was hard to calculate for the route setting team. It's a situation, a higher level event than any of them have ever been a part of. It was the first Olympic event. All of them were seasoned World Cup competitors, but you could see the stress very, very evidently on a lot of the climbers. So that was, it's hard to predict those kinds of things, how they're actually going to react.
I definitely agree with you.
Yeah. So I think there's lots of things that could have gone wrong, and lots of ways that the route setting, could have caused serious issues. Like, obviously, like if on the lead routes, if there was a bottleneck where 90% of the climbers fall on a certain move, that can be disappointing to see that kind of thing. But it didn't happen really. I can't complain very much about it. It's an incredibly difficult job. I mean, it's it's one thing to have an idea of who you're setting for, what they're capable of, your own level and your own expertise and experience. But when it comes down to it, the day of the event, there's so many variables that are beyond your control that, all things considered, I think they did a great job.
Oh, hell yeah. Oh, cool. Well, that's your recap on the Olympics, ladies and gentlemen. Just go to YouTube to watch everything else about it. Or at least that's like the grungy recap of it. Like, we're not going to get too crazy on this.
I'm sure someone else has done a play-by-play breakdown somewhere. Yeah.
I am just waiting for the break. I'm honestly waiting for Albert to do this.
Actually, I did watch. There was I only watched the women's version of it, but beta climbing. His name escapes me right now, but he did a good breakdown of. I'll
have to watch it. I haven't
both
seen
the
it.
men's and the women's combined. At least the finals. It may have been the qualifiers as well. I haven't had a chance to catch up on a lot of the media since, but it was a good kind of breakdown and conversation about those topics too.
Nice. I'll put that in the show notes because I haven't watched that yet, so I'll be psyched to see that. Yeah, hell yeah. So you are getting ready to bump off to Salt Lake, and I know we briefly talked about what you're going to do there, and still trying to figure that part out. But what are you excited about moving there for? Or did you just obviously getting out of this fucking concrete jungle?
I'm excited to go somewhere new. Yeah, I used to spend significantly less time in one area before moving around. I spent a number of years kind of, doing a few years in an area and then moving and bouncing back and forth and whatnot. And, obviously, the actual outdoor rock climbing availabilities in and around the Dallas area are limited, to say the least, I would say. And so, I'm certainly excited to get back to hopefully more regular rock climbing around Salt Lake. I like the area a lot. I've visited many times over the last, 10 years or something. I think I went to Joe's Valley probably longer ago than that. It's probably like 2008 or 9 was the first time I went there.
Oh, wow.
And I climbed around St. George a little bit before. But other than that, I actually haven't done a lot of climbing in Utah yet. And there's obviously a lot of it, all kinds.
Yeah, shitload.
Yeah, so I'm excited for that. Just kind of a change of scenery in general, even just beyond the climbing. Just be able to enjoy the outdoors again on a more regular basis. Right now it's like 90 degrees with 8,000% humidity in Dallas.
Classic
It
summers.
It feels like a rainforest. Literally feels like a rainforest.
Yeah, as of late, yeah, I feel like we have much more of Houston's weather right now.
Yeah, it's exceptionally humid at the
Yeah.
moment.
It's been a little. It's definitely been a little raw over the last couple of days. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong, Texas needs the rain, so I'm not gonna like really bitch about it because I think they just declared wildfires and water shortages, freshwater shortages are going to be a thing in the future, which we have all known that's going to be a thing.
Yeah.
So bring all the rain you want, but it is hot as balls.
Yeah, the wildfires have been crazy out west this year. When I was in Reno a month or so ago. Yeah, I was. We were surrounded by wildfires, literally, like in all directions. There was a day when I walked outside of the gym and it was raining ash. It was, that's how close we were to some of the fires.
That's not okay. Can I just go ahead and say that's the last time it was really that situation, like it was raining. I mean, minus a wildfire is when that one mountain Mount St. Helen erupted, which, we were children, like small kids, or I don't know. I'll have to Google when that was, but I'm pretty sure it happened when we were on this earth. But
I think it was in the 80s, yeah, right?
Yeah, I was born in 84.
Yeah.
And so I don't know when it was. Maybe it was before that or after that. Someone will say that when it is. But that was there was raining ash all across the country. Like people in Texas were getting small bits of ash from that thing.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that if I had grown up and lived out west, I'd be more used to them. But I also hear that they are worse and getting worse. It's what it seems like.
Oh, yeah.
Salt Lake, I was there last weekend as well. It was a quite smoky, quite smoky.
Yes.
I was surprised at how dense and just how close some of the fires were to Salt Lake City proper. Yeah.
Oh wow, I didn't even.
Yeah, there's one off of I-80. It's up towards Park City, I believe, that's burning right now.
Jesus. Okay, I didn't realize it was that close to Salt Lake. They're just always going on, and I think I've just gotten desensitized to them.
Sure.
And I'm just okay, they're we need to figure this thing out. And in my mind, basically all of Oregon, Washington, and California is just small splotches of it are on fire.
Yeah, tinderbox.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, I don't know.
Jesus. Huh. Well, I want to switch gears here and kind of get into the topic that I was psyched to talk to you about, and I just did an episode with Boone Speed.
Yeah,
and
I just listened to that.
Actually, the man is living legend. I'm listening to the podcast myself. I can tell I was a little giddy because I was just really Jesus. I was yeah, living legend. Boone, if you're listening to this, I don't give a shit. You're a living legend. Deal with it.
Deal with it.
Yeah. We talked about a little bit about his grasshopper board, and I know you have a very vast knowledge on spray walls and spray wall theory and the concept of that. And I'd really like to kind of talk about the idea to build a spray wall at home or to build a woody versus buying a board. And so for those of you, just for context, we're just going to go ahead and say, this is not an exact quote, but we're going to say Boone's board is just a little over $10,000, for a really nice home setup. I think it's a little over that, maybe 12, whatever. We'll get exact numbers later on, or we'll give you information where you guys can get in contact with them. But let's just say, for the sake of conversation, we're talking 11 grand, and you're done. And you have a wall that has thousands of boulder problems on it. You have a wall that you can warm up on, which is key. And that's the difference between the grasshopper board and any other board that's out there. You can actually warm up on that board, which I was massively surprised about.
I thought that was a good distinction for him to make in the podcast when I heard him talking about that. Yeah, because it's true that, the moon board.
You cannot warm up on the moon board.
It's quite hard. I'm sure some people can, but I would say that for most of us, it's not really the best way to warm up.
Yeah, for the masses. The moon board, if the moon board is really just designed to be in a commercial gym, then it sets its purpose. For people really wanting to have it at home, I don't know, it's just not fun. And correct me if I'm wrong, maybe other people disagree, but it's just not freaking fun not to warm up climbing sometimes. Like, yeah, well, I want to do some resistance band. Yeah, I want to get on my tension. I want to get on my tension block and pull on my fingers a little bit and just get them warm. But for the most part, I want to warm up climbing.
Yeah.
And I feel like I've used some people's home woodies before, and I'm going on it, and I do this anyway. I go on a 10-minute run or something, get on a bike or some kind of thing, cardio for 10 minutes. But then I've got to warm up the elbows, not just bands. I got to do push-ups. I got to do fingers. I got to hang.
Yeah.
I got to do quite a lot of stuff. And then I'm even still nervous to really throw down on that thing. 'Cause I can warm up on a moon board. I can warm up on anything, but still.
I think it's a tool.
Yeah, it is.
Like most tools, there are more and less effective ways to use them, and times when they're maybe more and less appropriate, depending on who you are and what you want to do as well.
Yeah,
and so
that's true.
Maybe the moon board is. I would just say it's more specific in a lot of ways than the grasshopper
I love
board.
the board. It's my favorite one to climb on. It's one of my favorite ones to climb on in the gym, at least at Summit.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Everyone hates it. I just like that the holds are gnarly because it reminds me more of climbing outside.
Yeah.
But,
and that's what I do think the best use of it is for recruiting that kind of
movement,
raw strength, and climbing for outside. Yeah.
But so getting to the topic at hand, so I think that's his board. So you get a freestanding board, you get holds, you get a mat, you get everything. It can fit in an apartment. You can it's freight shipped to you, put it together, boom, you're ready to go. And it can go with you. It doesn't have to be built into a wall or anything. So it's really, really nice. Now we're going to get into the concept of building a spray wall. And this can be a monumental headache, or it can be something really, really, really cool. And I kind of, I'm going to let you kind of go into it. And so I think, if someone wants to build a spray wall, what would you say are a few key things they have to keep in consideration when they're going to start this process?
Oof. Well, I guess there's a lot of questions to ask with regards to what you want and what you are able to do with your setup. I mean, obviously, there's some general questions about size related to what kind of dwelling you're in. If you're in an apartment, if you're in a house, how big you can build this thing, whether it's attached to a wall, whether it has to be freestanding. There's some kind of, I guess, just general considerations like that. More specifically to the climbing, I would say what you want to use it for is a big question. Whether you're simply using it to train for climbing outside, to climb your outdoor project, to stay in shape, as if you're a recreational climber and you just want to move a little bit every day, climb for an hour or so, or whether you're a hardcore enthusiast and you're, setting your simulation of your project, say for instance, and, training for several hours a day. Or if you are, more focused on competition climbing and you want a board that's, maybe set up with holds and angles and whatnot that are more applicable towards competition climbing. So there's a lot of questions, I guess, to ask yourself, before you even begin designing it. What do I want to get out of this? What do I want to do? I mean, there's endless debates about, I guess, well, I say there's endless debates about spray walls, but there's probably 6 of us that actually talk about it. This is all the information about spray walls you never needed to know and still don't need to know. But I mean, it's just a matter of what you want to get out of it. And I think there's a lot of answers to that.
So, and what you just said is, I think it's I imagine most people, it's going to be, so narrowing that list down, I imagine most people, it's going to be one of 3 things. They're simulating their projects, or the things that they're working on. They're trying to just stay fit. And then they're doing it for competitions. And, I think the big, starting backwards, competitions sounds to me, it's probably going to be the biggest upfront cost and build, because you have to keep in consideration of angles and terrains. Look at the World Cup walls, or any of the World Cup, any kind of walls. You're going from slab to vert to overhang, and so you kind of need to have enough space to set that up.
Yeah,
because you can't really
if your sole focus were competing, sole focus is training to compete in indoor climbing competitions. it would be very hard to simply build one board at one angle and train on it effectively.
Yeah. It's like how much
You could
space?
you could get quite strong in very specific ways, and even with the right holds, you could do a lot.
Yeah.
But if you're talking about someone who is, training for competitions, it would be very difficult to train, at least exclusively, on a home board of one angle. Yeah.
Yeah. No. So like how much space would you think someone needs per angle? So like slab, like I think you gotta at least have, I would say minimum 20 feet, like just at least width going back and forth.
Yeah, maybe not necessarily that much, but you would slab would quite large because especially with more modern styles of bouldering, you need the ability to run,
Yeah.
literally, quite literally on the wall. Some lateral movements, slow traverse movements as well. It helps to have a wide space, Yeah. So I mean, yes, if you were truly, in a scenario where you have either a home or a garage or something that's large enough to build, let's say 4 or 5 angles.
You need a barn, basically.
Yeah, if you say you had a barn, for instance.
Yeah.
If I had a barn, I would build a 20-foot slab for sure. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So you could have at least, so if you're doing competition climbing, there's probably, so what do you need? Slab, you need what, moderate overhang, and would you say you need super steep?
Yeah, I mean, if I were just off the top of my head, I would probably build, a slab, maybe like -4, -5, somewhere around there. I would do a vert wall or a wall that's, between 0 and 5 degrees overhanging.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a wall that's around 15 or so. I would do one wall that's 45, a steep wall.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe something else in between. I would say like another 30 or 35 as well.
Yeah, so and that's a probably good competition setup.
There's not very, very few modern competition walls that are steeper than 40, 45 degrees.
Yeah.
They're trending much more in the other direction, but it's, not unheard of in some situations to have a wall steeper than that.
Okay. And then, so kind of going back up this list, so we've talked, someone who's training for competition, someone who's training just to keep fit. I mean, my guess is like a simple 30-degree wall. You can have one wall. It doesn't have to be fancy. Doesn't even really have to be that much. You're really just making moves on it. And it doesn't really have to be that big. I mean, you could probably just have a simple 12 by 12.
Yeah, no, that would be plenty. That would be plenty, yeah.
Yeah.
And also I would add that if you have the ability to make the wall adjustable, even if it's a crank winch system, something old school, or a counterweight or something, obviously that gives you a big advantage as well.
Yeah.
Regardless of if you're, a novice or an expert, having an adjustable wall would be nice.
It's funny. So that kind of brings up a concept that not a concept, but a thing that I've always noticed. And people have always asked me, and at Dallas, this is definitely a little bit more because those walls are older and they're a little bit more of a home built. Oh, dude, break into the whiskey. Break into the whiskey. We are definitely enjoying our Joe's Valley whiskey. What is it?
I don't think, is it? I think it's
I don't know what it is. I call it Joe's Valley because someone bought it.
I'm sure
Clyde
it's either
Mays.
Kentucky or
So
it's.
it is. It's beautiful regardless of whatever it is. But I think so. Having a wall like that, it's just, if you're just trying to stay in shape, it doesn't have to be fancy. You're really just probably going to slap maybe a volume or two on it. You don't have to have as much space. I think the mechanical design of having a winch or something where it's adjustable is rough. And so this kind of goes into something that I always talked about where people would complain about finger injuries. And I noticed this is not really so much a thing on the Walltopia walls at the gym, but the old Dallas ones, because it was just cheaply built. That gym was very cheaply built. It's a well-known fact. But the holds flex, the wall flexes, everything flexes when you do it. And I've always wondered if that's really equated to finger injuries or more tennis elbow, golfer's elbow, because you have to deal with quite a bit. And I think on these newer walls, more modern walls, like you don't get that much flex, and that's it. And I think that would be my concern about building an adjustable wall that's not on a steel frame or something that locks or anything like that, because the movement alone, I I think you're gonna wreck your elbows. I think you're gonna like you open yourself up to much more, especially if you're doing big powerful moves to like, you know, shallow holds and you're really trying to dead point and hold. It's one thing if you like hit that and adjust in your body, absorb it through your shoulders, but then you have to worry about the whole wall and everything shaking. Comparison to like when you're grabbing on stone, nothing moves. And so that's that's a concern I have. So would you say that is a valid concern, or is someone building their own wall just for the purposes of fitness and making it adjustable? Is that something they shouldn't really worry about?
I mean, it could be. I suppose it would depend on the level of climbing that you're doing on that wall, maybe, and the type of holds and things like that. I hadn't given much consideration to that, but I could see how there might be a difference too between the way that the holds will flex on softer wood, for instance, pulling versus like the entire wall shaking and the entire wall moving a little bit. But yeah, I'm not sure actually. I'm not confident on that one.
It's just something I've always noticed over the years, and it's just like it was interesting the first time I climbed at like a real rock climbing gym that actually had real nice walls. I was like, oh shit, the wall doesn't move.
Yeah, my main experience with the softer wood is that you will literally rip the holds through the wall after a long period of time, especially when you have excessive moisture and wood rot and mildew and things like that.
Oh, that's so funny. That reminds me of like every year. So all route setters know this in an old gym, but every February, all the T-nuts just fall out of the Dallas gym because the wood contracts in the winter, expands during the summer with all the humidity, and they're just like slowly backed out over the years because majority of those things are hammer ends.
Yeah, I think they maybe have finally gotten around to replacing a lot of them over the years, but I'm sure there are sections that are still hammer in there.
Yeah. I remember. I remember doing that. I remember that was part of the job back in the old D-Rocks days. There was literally a shift where you would just go in the back and just replace T-nuts. And this is old Dallas Rocks days, not Summit. So next comment I'm going to say there was a bunch of people getting real high, doing that all the time. And because you're just back there just breathing dust for hours. And then so now we're moving on to the topic, the idea of like someone is building a wall to simulate their projects. And I think this kind of goes back to the whole competition thing. Like your projects change over time. Yeah. So, I guess you would really have to kind of build it in a way that is conducive to either the areas that you have access to consistently.
Sure.
Or the areas that you plan on traveling to. And in my opinion, I would say building like a 40 to 45 degree wall and maybe a 30 degree, but like on 30, I feel like the holes have to get real sharp and real bad. Yeah. In order for you to really make difficulty on that thing.
Yeah, I mean, if it's a situation where, gun to my head, you have to build one angle, for me, I would build a 40. I'm sure people will disagree with me. Everyone has their opinion, but it's also probably based around the type of climbing that they're doing, where they're climbing out, like you said. If you're climbing at an area, like if you're climbing at pre-straw all the time, maybe you want to build a roof because you're going to be climbing on roofs. Yeah, pretty much exclusively there. Yeah. So it maybe does depend on exactly what you want, which is again, why the adjustable wall is better in some ways, but obviously that's a whole other can of worms, and it's a different situation too if you're somebody who's just building, a 12 by 12 wall in their apartment or their shed or something versus, if you have a barn or if you're in a commercial facility and you're designing, training walls and spray walls for a big commercial facility. You have
no, that makes sense.
Maybe hopefully some more room to play with than, a 12 by 12.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That definitely makes sense. And so you guys can kind of do the math here as far as lumber construction and all of this that we're talking about needs to be built into either a frame or some kind of, I think building this freestanding would just be a pain in the butt out of lumber.
Lumber, yeah, it could be.
Yeah, because you take up way more space than you need. So it's better off just to build it into the existing frame of the house, which hopefully you don't drill into something that you don't need to be doing. So definitely be mindful there. And now kind of like
moving into holds where that's just like, I think that's where it really kind of starts, the price starts skyrocketing.
Holds are really expensive. It's true. I think almost everyone is shocked how quickly it adds up when they're doing their initial hold orders. If you're not familiar with it, you know?
Yeah.
Even if you're just buying kind of smaller, low profile flat holds or crimps or things like that, you know, for your home wall, it adds up. It's
Real
quick.
fast.
Yeah, it's something that's very important to do your homework beforehand when you're budgeting. Because if you do not budget properly, you will have a very blank home wall afterwards.
So let's just say you got like your standard, like what, 32 or 48 T-nuts per or 4x8 sheet and adding screw-ons and that. And I just want to fill in the wall. Like, have you ever seen Chris Hampton's pictures of his wall?
Yeah.
So like that thing is pretty well filled in.
Yeah.
And I know he's been doing it over the years for a while. But like if you're wanting to get to something of that level, and let's just say we've got a 40-degree wall and then it's like 40 degrees and it nice little like curves on the side, and it's just a standard 12 by 12, like just ballpark, you know, it's 8 feet tall, same like a standard ceilings. Like I want to just fill it in, screw ins, volumes, like just filling in, like what is just out of this, just a random ballpark number.
Well, I mean, if you're talking about, you know, filling it in, hard to say. I mean, 12 to 15,000 maybe.
Oh.
if you really want that much.
That's lower than I thought. I was going to think around I was thinking of maybe around more like 20 to 25.
It's hard to say. You know, it really would depend on the hold company, the actual size of all the holds you're getting. I mean, if you're literally just filling it with, you know, single pad edges, yeah, you could probably do it for 10 grand for a wall that big. Maybe less. Maybe you could get some deals. You get some seconds, some things like that.
Yeah. What are seconds?
Just like cosmetic defects and things like that. So sometimes hold companies will offer deals on holds that, you know, don't meet the quality standards, essentially.
Yeah,
which is a really good thing to actually inquire about for those of you that are interested in this kind of thing, because it's not always advertised in companies, and some don't do it. Some, and also sometimes it depends on who's manufacturing the holds, if they're able to offer the cosmetic seconds or not. A lot of holds are manufactured through Aragon in Colorado now, which is probably the biggest manufacturer in the U.S., or it certainly is. But yeah, there's other companies that you know, will do either on a regular basis or on a when it's available basis. They'll offer, you know, cosmetic seconds, and sometimes this is you know, as little as a blemish in the coloring. Like I've gotten some seconds holds before that I was hard pressed to find what was wrong with the hold. You know, they were really good. But other times you're going to get the hold and the washer in the middle is missing, or it's over poured plastic. It doesn't fit on the wall right. You know, there's a myriad of things that can go wrong in the production process. And so it's sort of one of those things where you're kind of gambling sometimes with the seconds, but it can be a pretty good deal in a lot of cases, especially if you just need a bulk amount of holds of a certain type, you know?
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. That's a good thing to ask, you know, just if you're building your home wall out and you're looking at hold companies, emailing them or calling them. It's certainly worth asking if they offer any deals on cosmetic or defects or things like that.
Yeah, and so we're really talking about holds. We haven't really even dabbled into volumes or fiberglass features or anything like that, flat holds, any of these larger things. And so, I mean, and I don't even want to begin. Like, I remember Jared with Motivation Volumes, and I remember his price point on his volumes. And granted, those things were built like a tank, a little over-engineered in my opinion, but they wouldn't break on you, that's for sure.
They were tanks. That's true.
Yeah, the Pele.
Rhino-lined tanks.
Yeah. Dude, the Pele still is a tank of a volume.
Yeah.
Do they still... It's still behind the wall at Dallas, isn't it? And it's not currently on the wall.
Probably. The giant one?
Yeah.
I'm sure it's back there somewhere.
Yeah, the thing
collecting dust and...
It's a fun thing to climb on. It's just a monster to put on the wall.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So for those of you who don't know, imagine a half soccer ball, but like flat sides of all the little soccer black and white squares. And it's what, like an 8-foot diameter circle.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's like 7 or 8 feet, probably.
Yeah, and then it stands like laying flat on the ground. What, like would you say 3.5 feet, 4 feet tall?
Yeah, probably 3 to 3.5, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a big one. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember it has an eye bolt in the back of it.
Mm-hmm.
We would have to, like, 3 or 4 people would be holding it on to the wall, screwing it in, and then, but before that happens, someone is in the back, and we would tie it off to the framing structure of the wall, put a gree on it, and just tension it down so it wouldn't move.
Yeah,
And
so in case of screw blows as you're putting on the wall, it doesn't kill someone. Yeah.
yeah. And then I just basically leave it on the gree loaded, or just tie it off.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would actually take it off the gree and then just tie it off.
Yeah.
So it doesn't fall and murder someone.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be it would make your day pretty bad quickly. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it would be interesting. Would it make the American Alpine Book's Book of Accidents?
I don't know. They have a book of accidents?
Yeah, American Alpine Club. They produce a book of accidents every year that happen outdoors, and like what are the common things. And it's like it's a good thing to read because like
morbid book.
Oh, dude, it is morbid, but it's actually, I highly recommend every climber who's really thinking about going outdoors, like, just pick it up and read it. And yeah, you're gonna be like, oh, I'm gonna
And you
die.
won't go climbing after that.
You probably won't
close it and.
But
go back
honestly, it's actually really ironic. Like, the number one injury that people have is weather. They just don't prepare. They get caught in rain. Don't bring enough water. Don't bring
I'm sure,
enough.
especially if you're in like an alpine environment, for instance, just so unpredictable with the
Or
weather.
people getting sunburned so bad to the point where they get sick. Like, it's usually weather and not preparing for proper weather, whether it's sport climbing, alpine, whatever. But like, that's usually like the biggest thing that there's always stories of that it's like people don't pay attention that like it's raining a mile up the road and then they're walking through a canyon and the canyon flash floods or shit like that. So
yeah, well, and humans have the innate, sense that they can just deal with anything. They'll just make it work,
Nah,
until
brah. Nah, brah. Nah, brah.
Yep.
Oh, man. Yeah, so, but yeah, I wonder if it would make the cut. I would petition for it to be in the cut.
You could ask for it, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because this is like a rarity. It would be a rarity. Which, by the way, if you guys are listening, the pay light will not fall on you if it ever goes back on the wall.
That's
Guaranteed.
never going to go back on the wall, I don't think.
I
I don't know.
hope not. That thing is a monster. Someone will buy it one day. I guarantee you. Someone will buy it and put it on their home wall and think it's the greatest thing in the world. And then they're going to realize it is the biggest nuisance ever.
It's probably for sale right now. If you're listening to this and you know what we're talking about and you truly want it, just go to Summit Dallas and make them an offer. I'm sure they would give it to you right now.
Yeah. Bring your own U-Haul.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, but, I mean, the question of, like, volumes for spray walls, again, it's sort of kind of what you want to get out of it. I think that the smaller your spray wall, the less effective they may be. Maybe a few like lower profile volumes could help, like some smaller triangles and things like that, just to help change the dimension of certain things, I think that even if you are someone who is solely training for, your steep outdoor project, there are some good uses for volumes on home walls and things like that. Just they're obviously if you have climbed enough within gyms, you kind of understand how they can change the terrain of flat panels and how they can force certain movements and whatnot more easily. So there's definitely an argument for using some of them, but in the right way. I think it's important, and obviously having a huge cube volume in the middle of your 15-degree wall is maybe not the best use of space. I mean, it can be fun, if you just want to do a bunch of mantles on top of your wall or something. But
I remember we had a cube volume at Dallas when we were setting, and the only thing it was good for was holding Ryan Sewell's coffee.
Yeah.
That's basically, like, we literally put it on the wall to hold your coffee in the morning. Other than that, it had no purpose.
Yeah, we've had, at one point, all of the Summit gyms had collected quite a few. We had a friend of the company who was making volumes, Bob Brown.
Oh, yeah, I
so
remember
he had
this.
started, he was in his spare time, he had a wood shop in his house, and he was making volumes. And someone had got it in their head that they loved cubes. I don't know, one of the owners or probably Kyle, who knows. But so we, at some point, I swear we had 40 or 50 cubes. And they would just migrate from gym to gym because they would get used for a few months. People would get tired of them. They would migrate to another gym. I think they all ended up at Carrollton. At one point, I made some stairs out of them. I built some stairs up to one of the old spray walls.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I don't know where they are now. They're probably still in the back, mostly sitting there.
Good riddance.
They're useful in certain situations, you know.
They're fun. I mean, they're fun to climb on.
They can be fun. They can be really fun.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they're like bad, but like, I think it's very easy to go too much in volumes in any particular one shape or anything. And that kind of leads me to another thought. Like, I had a friend who was building a spray wall, and he was like, dude, I bought hundreds and hundreds of holds. And I found the greatest way to save money by holds. And I was like, and he told me how much he spent. And I wish I remembered. And I was like, how did you get that many holds? And he's like, it's great. Will you come and help me set? All of them were screw-ons.
Yeah.
Everything was a screw-on. Like, literally, and he had no volumes. And he had a 40-degree wall. And he had no volumes. He had a couple jugs, screw-ons, but everything else was just like all these little edge jibs and that. And I literally looked at him like, dude, you're setting like V25.
V25, yeah.
Because everything is so bad.
The future.
Oh, dude, it was like they were all dual techs, like little edges, and he was just like, "No, it's great. We'll just like stack them on top of each other to make a jug." And I'm like,
"Yeah, we could. I could do lots of things."
Really? I mean, really.
Yeah, you'd have to be. I mean, you'd have to get creative. That's for sure.
Yeah, we did.
You might be disappointed.
Yeah, he was. But, I mean, we ended up. I think he ended up making volumes or buying volumes because he just like couldn't get off the ground. And I think after the first pulley injury, I think he kind of got the hang. Yeah. But now, that's not to take away. I think screw-ons on a home wall are probably the most underutilized thing because I know a lot of friends, like, they don't want to put them on their wall because they're like, I just don't want to chew up my climbing wall. And I'm like, then why'd you build it?
Yeah.
And I think that's a question you have to ask yourself because, like, it's going to get beat up and torn up. And I literally had a friend years ago. He's like, well, I want to put screw-ons on because, like, if the rubber and the shoes get up, it gets dirty, I can just, like, lightly sand it and put a new finish on it. And I'm like, this is not a kitchen table. Like this, like you're going for the wrong purposes.
Yeah, I mean, everybody has their own desire for what they want out of it, I guess. But yeah,
I mean, but that's just stupid.
Yeah, I mean, that's maybe so you know, home walls. Some people refer to them as just woodies because traditionally that's what they are. Just plywood with wood. And I personally don't have a lot of regard for how I set my wall in terms of the abuse that it takes. You know, I had a small wall in the last house that I owned in a shed out back, and I actually didn't even T-nut it because I just am used to screwing everything on by this point in my life too. And there's also, you can, you know, with modern advances of beefier washers, companies make washers like the Escape makes, like the Lone Star and the Ringo from Blocks and things like that that work pretty well as a bolt substitute in most cases. Not 100%, but pretty much, especially for a home wall. You could get away with, you know, not T-nutting your wall if you really wanted to. I'm not saying it would be the easiest thing, especially
it's just more time consuming to set.
It's more time consuming to set, 100%. Yeah. I actually made the mistake of advocating for a spray wall that we built. We built a really pretty big spray wall in Denton, the Denton gym, 4 or 5 years ago. I don't remember, something like that. And of course, I had this brilliant idea to not T-nut the wall because I thought it would be great. You know, we wouldn't have to worry about moving things around so much. Like, we wouldn't have to worry about you know, fitting in this hole next to this hole. Like, space wasn't an issue. You know, if you're not confined by the T-nut grid in terms of like where holes go, then you can put holes wherever you want. You know, because we use a lot of larger features on those spray walls. You know. And very quickly, I regretted my decision. It was incredibly time-consuming.
Did they end up taking it down and T-nutting it, didn't they?
I think about a year ago. I think during, that was one of the COVID projects, during the quarantine period when the gyms were still closed. I think that was one of the things that happened was it got re-T-nutted. Or, sorry, not re-T-nutted, just T-nutted.
Yeah.
So that was a mistake on my part for sure.
Yeah, I could definitely. I mean, I would hate you for that. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. Well, I hated myself because I was the one that had to set it. So it was, I suffered my own decision in this regard. So, I would have felt worse if it was someone else having to deal with that. But
So actually, that kind of brings up two little topics that I want to kind of go into, because I want to go into like spray wall theory and like how to actually set a spray wall. Like, what's the process? I know it's like big to little. It's like a very simplified way to say that. But I think also too is oh shit, that train just left the station and I was like trying to help. Damn whiskey. Fuck. Or bleep or whatever. I don't. It's my fucking show. I can say whatever.
that's
I want.
okay. Yeah, you just add that in post. It's fine.
Yeah. But yeah. So you have theory, and then God damn it, with the spray, it was there on the tip of my tongue. Whatever, we'll come back to it. So yeah, but let's just talk about theory. So like when someone's setting a spray wall, so can you kind of explain like why? I mean, to me, and I think to any route setter and to anyone who's ever put a hold on the wall, the concept from big to little makes sense.
Yeah.
But can you kind of like dive into that just for a hot second?
Yeah. I mean, that's for sure the most the best way to start. I think from a general perspective is the large to small theory of, usually when I do a spray wall, I would say I start with volumes first. So I will, have everything that I need or that I have at my disposal laid out. I'll choose volumes based off of the angle, place them usually with some ideas in mind about how they might be climbed through, but also typically I just kind of will spread them out on the wall.
Is there particular volumes that are there particular volumes that are like a no-no on particular angles?
I mean, just
I know it's all subjective. Like we get it. Like grades are subjective. All of it's subjective.
Yeah,
but
I don't like high profile volumes regardless of the angle, to be honest, because they just get in the way. I mean, obviously we talked about cubes, like that being kind of ridiculous, like obstructions, but even larger profile, triangles, for instance, like asymmetrical or symmetrical triangle volumes, which is the kind of the most common thing that people know with volumes. Even the ones that are higher profile on steeper walls can sometimes get in the way. They can sometimes force your body away from the wall too much. And in certain situations, you do want that feeling of climbing around something, that protrusion, the kind of three-dimensional feel. But with a spray wall, unless you're in a situation where you're like changing it every week or two, which is very rare, if not, unheard of, it can become stifling when things when they feel the same when you climb through them. You know what I mean? Like a lot of times I've experienced situations where I put a really big volume on the wall, or a volume that I think will be cool to climb through, and it ends up kind of funneling everything either through the volume or around the volume because of how big it is. So you always end up sort of like, I kind of feel like I'm climbing on it, or I'm like, I need to go around it to do a certain move,
Yeah, I think that's really only applicable like for slab, because I think, correct me if I'm wrong here, but like I think slab is like the hard part where you have to learn how to go around or through something. And like you're really trying to glide, especially if you're doing something like where we talk about running or skipping or skating across something. I think that's very applicable there. But
it is. It's maybe more applicable there, but I found it, I run into that issue a lot on steep walls. So on 40 and 45 degree angles as well, if the volumes are too big. And again, it sort of depends on exactly what you're looking at here. I think maybe some people's definition of like higher profile in their mind is different than mine. But just generally speaking, I don't like to put on volumes that are tremendously high profile. I think it makes it easier to kind of navigate through them and around them in different and creative ways. And I think that really the idea with a good spray wall is that you want to have the best number of possible combinations of moves you can do. You want to have like the best setup so that you can always create different and new movement every time you get on it. The more you're climbing on new types of movement, the faster you're adapting and learning those kinds of things. You know, it's obviously it is good to have, you know, benchmarks, like if you're setting your project and you're training for it, like trying that kind of thing. Like there is value in that as well. But for me, when I'm designing a spray wall, I'm always interested in creating the highest combination of different movement on the wall. It's kind of the biggest thing. So I try to typically choose like lower profile volumes, you know, so the volumes will go on first. Then we do the bigger holds, and then nice. Oh God, the whiskey was good. That one, yeah.
Yeah, no, I just just put Drano down my throat, or maybe Green Goblin because it's organic. Oh my God.
But yeah, so holds, macros, some fiberglass volumes if you have those at your disposal, and if they are, you know, again applicable to what you want to do, like. Again, if we're going back to climbing on a wall that's just training outdoor boulders, maybe you don't want to have a bunch of, you know, giant fiberglass volumes on your wall. Might take up too much space. Might be kind of a pain in the ass.
I mean, is there not any... I mean, do you think there's not a lot of overlap from like... Actually, this is a good...
No, between outdoor and indoor.
Well, no. Not so much outdoor and indoor. Like, there is overlap, but that's a whole nother animal that like another side conversation, a rabbit hole we can go down in a minute. But like, I think of like large fiberglass volumes and things like that. It's more for competition setting. But like, does the overlap of training that, I've always felt that it's actually extremely applicable to get you thinking on how to unlock sequences on outdoor boulders, maybe not so much how to climb them stronger and just yarding on effing holds.
Yeah, no, there's something to be said for this for sure. And I've always kind of took issue with the idea of, and this is more looking into route setting in regards to, you know, boulder problems and routes, maybe not so much like spray walls, but the idea of competition setting versus commercial setting, or, you know, real rock climbing setting, quote unquote. I've tried to stray away from this for a long time because I do think there's more crossover than people like to admit, you know. I think that oftentimes people that feel maybe stymied by a certain style of competition climbing, that has maybe led to a lot of this kind of you know, growing differentiation between like people saying, "Oh, I don't want or like that comp style of boulder."
Compy boulder, like
I'm not good at X, Y, and Z, for instance.
Well, it reminds me of the old school argument because one of my mentors, Mark Pell, would say this all the time. Like, you know, people are like, "Oh, I don't like compy boulders, that skippy skatey stuff," and then people were like, you know, and I remember the first time I was like, "Well, I mean, Chris Sharman's strong," and they're like, "Well, that's if you don't like to use your feet and you just jump around all day," and I'm like, "But he climbed V10." I mean, he climbed the thing. Like, he did the thing that other people once thought was impossible. And there was the argument for a while, especially out of these old school trad dads. They're like, "Well, it's not real rock climbing." Like, I literally remember talking to a bunch of old school guys. I'm out there sport climbing with them, and they literally considered Chris Sharma and a bunch of people not real rock climbers because they're like, "Well, they don't." He's like, you know, they're not like, you know, they just jump around on routes.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's not the kind of climbing that you want to do, and that's okay.
Yeah, and I get that, but you can't take away that it makes you a better rock climber, period.
And certainly there are extremes to all situations. You know, like, yes, I have not personally done a skate move outside where I've had to run and take 4 steps before I jump to a hold.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that doesn't exist. It very well could.
Oh, I mean, the pogo didn't. Everybody thought the pogo wouldn't exist, and then it came from a real rock climb.
Yeah. I mean, well, there's all kinds of examples. I mean, even paddle dynos have become, you know, ubiquitous in well, I wouldn't say ubiquitous. That's an exaggeration, but you can find paddle dynos outside now in ways that are, you know, let's say, quote unquote, forced in a lot of situations.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, a lot of times it just comes down to what people do and don't want to climb, you know, and that's okay. But that's you can, you know, it's your yoga, man. You know, it's you do what you want.
You got to try this whiskey that Tucker and Sailor got you. This is definitely Japanese steel barrel.
Steel barrel.
Oh, you can taste it. You can taste
the steel. The the discipline of the Japanese in it. You can taste
taste it has a hint of firmness. It reminds me as a small child of riding my bike and fucking landing on the pavement and understanding the roughness of life.
God, that's
I watched this YouTube video on like how to give like tasting notes, and they were always like, don't just talk about like what it tastes, talk about what it reminds you of. And I'm like, well, goddamn,
memory recall tasting notes.
Yeah.
Tastes like nostalgia bike riding.
Yeah. But you know,
What we're talking about.
I don't know. Like basically, I don't know. I just want to validate that, like, and I'm going to speak for myself. Like when I actually started focusing on like compy style climbs and things like that, I immediately noticed two things in my outdoor rock climbing. One, my ability to unlock sequences got a lot faster.
Yeah.
Two, my ability to, I guess, do link ups got a lot faster. And I guess actually the third thing, which, you know, story of my life, I do things in threes, is I started climbing way faster. I actually started climbing faster, like fast and furious now. And like people, I've even, like, I don't try to do this in the gym, but it's just turned into this thing. Like, you know, my friend Lily she was just like, you climb so fast. Mm-hmm. She's like, it's like, I literally had to learn how to belay you. And she's like, you climb so fast and you're not afraid of falling and you're not afraid of this. And she asked me like how I did that. And I was like, I started working on problems that are like not in the realm. Cause my background is strictly outdoor rock climbing, strictly trad dad. Sure. Like I chased really hard trad routes most of my life before I started like really trying to climb like, you know, your traditional hard sport climbs and things like that. But like my goal was like 513 trad is what I want to do. Do I still want to do it? Yeah, I'm a little psychotic. I'll admit it. I like off width. It's psychotic, but
different strokes. You know?
Yeah. Off width is a really wide stroke.
Body length stroke. Yeah. Yeah. Well, no, but I think it's a good point that you're speaking to about the crossover.
Yeah, I just don't think people think it's. I don't know. I think more people like to bitch about it instead of letting it actually help you.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and it's again, I think it's not something that I'm trying to force down anyone's throat, so to speak. But I think that's an important thing to take away is that it's difficult to be uncomfortable when you're pushing yourself and training and things like that. I think a lot of times people they're looking for the instant gratification. They're looking for that measure of success, and you know, and when you're stepping outside your comfort zone in a big way, with you know. Like for me, a good example, I guess, would be personally something I experienced a number of years ago. One of the first times that we invited Roman Krajnik from Slovenia, Janja's coach now, but we've had a relationship with him for a number of years. He's come to Dallas a lot, and you know, one of the first times he came, we were discussing, you know, more complex movement and more like kind of modern bouldering and whatnot. And I asked him, you know, if I could do a lesson with him because I wanted to learn and understand how to do it more myself so that I could teach it better and set it better and whatnot, and, you know, pass it down to the kids. And there was maybe halfway through the lesson, there was a move that he set me, and it was a simple kind of jump move, something that now, if you were to see it in a competition or in a gym, you wouldn't think twice about it. You know, you'd be like, oh yeah, like I see this move all the time. Like it's, you know, it's normal. I think I tried it for 45 minutes. One move, a single move, maybe over 100 attempts, you know. And I did the move eventually, but it was incredibly frustrating. It was a very humbling experience for me personally. And it's hard to work through that. I mean, it's hard to, you know, it was like in the beginning I was like embarrassed and insecure because I was just like, I mean, I don't have any illusions necessarily about, you know, me being a professional climber or anything like that. But, you know, I felt relatively confident and the move did not seem hard. And when I did the move, of course, it did not feel hard. The constant experience that a lot of people have with climbing at their limit, where once they do something, when you actually execute it, oftentimes it does not feel like you were at your limit. I mean, there are times when you do something and you are redlining, especially if you're, say climbing a route, you're incredibly pumped and gripped out of your mind, things like that. But sometimes, it's the subtleties, the things that you can't sense without a lot of anguish and without a lot of giving up, so to speak, in the situation.
Yeah, I think that's it though, man. It's like so I want to say two things here. It's like, one, everything you want in life, whether it's money, climbing, relationships, anything, everything you want in life is just outside of your comfort zone. So that's like a solid fact. I don't think anyone can argue with that. And I think the simple things are the hardest things. I don't know. There's this stupid meme going around or video or reel on Instagram but people are saying, this woman is saying, destroying things is easy, breaking things, but growing something is hard. Nurturing something is hard. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, it just popped in my head and made me think about it. It's like think about this, like when we're coaching kids, the simpler the concept, the harder it is to make them grasp it sometimes for me. And I'll say that, I don't know if that happens to you, but I know sometimes like the very simple concept, and I'm like, I just need you to slide your hips, think about being on a surfboard, and just fall into the hold. And it's more of a stand up, tilt my chest forward, and fall flat on the ground every single time. And I'm just like, I'm like having a brain aneurysm here and just like trying to get them to do this. And I think the simple nuance of things, they're more complicated. And I want to like give a really example. And this is an example I use to coaches when I'm coaching new coaches. Like, I'll never forget this. So my niece, when she was 7 or 8, I was trying to teach her how to wisp eggs with that little thing that has that. And it was just an effing mess. It was like splash, 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 splash everywhere. And the fact of the matter, I'm like, no, I need you to just like you see this circle that the fluid is making? Like, just keep that up, but try not to hit the bottom of the bowl. And I swear to you, it took me probably, and she lived with me at this time in our house, it probably took me like a month to get her to do this. And it just was like, and I don't know why I was so obsessed with this. I think it was also to the sound of her clinking a spoon or something across a bowl, and it was like just blood curdling. Yeah. But it took me forever to get her to do that. And it's just, I remember that all the time. And it's like, and then I ask people, I'm like, how many of you do that? That do cook or casually cook, can you do that? And I've had people walk up to me and it's like, I never thought about that. Like, it's a lot harder not to hit, like, it's not hard to not hit the bowl. Mm-hmm. It's not hard at all, but it's very hard to actively do it and turn it into straight muscle memory.
Yeah, I think, a lot of these things are about feeling, if we're bringing it back to climbing. Oftentimes when you're trying to articulate these concepts that are, sometimes simple in nature, sometimes very complex, a lot of them are difficult to articulate with words because they're about the feeling. They're about the experience of understanding the way your body feels in relation to the wall, the holds, gravity, momentum, all these things, and it's very difficult to articulate. It's often takes a lot of attrition, a lot of beating the head against the wall, so to speak. Certain kids, certain adults, they learn differently. Most people are not. In my experience, they're not able to learn through me telling them. That would be that would be too easy.
No, it would be. We'd be out of the job.
Sometimes it makes it that much more special when it requires that level of anguish. When you're coaching and working with someone.
Yeah, because think about it. When the kid finally does the thing, when they finally do the thing, even in a comp or in practice, like even today, a kid I was coaching, Not to, since she's a minor, we'll call her G. Uh, Today she created tension. And I was so excited that this little 8-year-old created tension for the first time, like grabbing onto a hold and simultaneously timing pushing her foot down and creating tension through the side of her body. I like lost it today in practice. I was like clapping. I was super excited. And, I think I got so excited that like I distracted her after the next like 5 moves later.
Yeah.
But it was super stoked because normally they climb like a noodle.
Yeah.
And it was a beautiful, 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 beautiful thing. And I think when you finally see that, it's funny you say that, and it's like, but that's what makes it worth it in that one little moment. Kind of like veering off on this rabbit trail about
No, it's
coaching.
okay. Yeah.
But yeah,
it is beautiful, and it's I mean, when you see someone have that experience, and you can tell that they've unlocked something and they understand it, the aha moment, so to speak.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
I like to use that one. That's special, for sure.
Yeah, no, I would definitely agree.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, the steel. The steel. Bicycle crashing. Like, it's like just rough enough at the end, but then it's like skinning your knee. Or like skinning your knee, or like not like a paper cut or something. It's like it burns for a hot second, but then it has that like rough lingering.
Yeah. I'm sure someone more versed in whiskey could, tell us what we're actually experiencing here. But
Nah, live your best life, man. It's our version is the truth. Listen, there are multiple truths in the world, and our truth is just what reigns superior at this moment.
That's the reality we live in. You can make your own truth, no matter if it's wrong or not. It's your truth.
Oh my God. Oh wow, that's like a whole nother thing. But like, kind of going back to this whole like spray wall thing and talking about roots. Yeah, like we were.
That's okay.
It's all rock climbing anyway.
Rabbit holes.
But yeah, I think the big thing I want to kind of bring to the point of people, and I hope you guys realize this, that like, yeah, I'm shamelessly plugging Boone's board. Yeah, I'm shamelessly plugging any board realistically. But like, I want you guys to consider like, it's a true investment. And I think the question you have to ask yourself is, how much of an investment are you wanting to make in your climbing? And I think that's really what it boils down to. Like, if climbing is your end all be all, first and foremost, I think you need to see a therapist, because it's not that important, because other things in life are way more important. So I'm going to just go ahead and call you out on that one. And I'm sure someone doesn't like me saying that, but I don't really care, boo-boo. And if you're listening to this, it's my show anyway.
Sucks to suck.
Yep. And second, I think once you kind of figure out really what you're trying to do and what you're trying to achieve, you have to look at like the level of investment, because I think the one thing that we didn't say is like, you have to keep buying holds. Like, if you really want to like get better, like you replace, like, gyms sell off old holds. I know Chris has even sold off old holds on his walls before that he doesn't use. He doesn't think they're applicable anymore.
Yeah.
And so, like, this is a never-ending cycle, and the benefit of buying a board is they just come out with a new hold set, and that hold set unlocks a whole new series of routes and boulders and things that are made for you. And some, probably the old ones, exist, and some walls just come up with fill-in sets, and so you're just getting more bang for your buck. So yeah, you may be out of like, $11,000-$12,000, whatever we said earlier. Yeah, you're out of it. But, just doing some quick math, let's just say that, you're not building a wall just to stay fit. If you're just like, trying to get rid of your dad bod or keep your dad bod away, then yeah, you can get away with this. But if you're actually trying to simulate boulders or create comp style training, I'm going to go ahead and say between the wall and the little bit of the holes that we talk, you're at least 30 G's. 30 to somewhere between 30 to 20 G's into this.
Yeah, and again, it totally depends on all the factors we talked about already, all that kind of thing. But the other part that I think is less discussed too, there's a million differences between a standard board like a moon board, a grasshopper, and things like that, and a spray wall you're building yourself. But the thing that is not discussed as often is that you have to create the movement yourself when you're doing a spray wall.
Yeah.
And this is one of the reasons why, that moon board, kilter board, tension, grasshopper, etc. Not only have they created these standardized boards, but they have their own apps. They have the boulder problems that you can add, that you can log, that you can test yourself on, you can repeat, et cetera, et cetera. It takes that level of creating out of the equation. Because I think that there's, there's a common misconception about route setting that it's, people have a lot of ideas about route setting, about what it is, what it isn't, how easy it is, how hard it is, et cetera. I think people nowadays, more climbers are aware, if you're climbing in a gym, of maybe the job that it takes to be route setter. The amount of effort and work that it takes to be a good route setter, I should say. But for instance, if you were a bit more of a novice climber and you're building your own home wall at home, and you build the wall, you put the holds on, that sort of next step of creating the movement that you want, creating interesting movement, keeping you engaged, that's, I think, something that not everyone can easily access.
No, it's hard.
I think it's maybe a bit more challenging than people realize to come up with something that is the right level for you to challenge you. That is not something that you're just either playing to your own strengths or repeating the same movement over and over again. I think there's a lot more nuance and thought that goes into it than people realize often.
Yeah, no, I would definitely agree with that. I mean, I think about traveling to other gyms. Like, I've climbed in the Bentonville gym and in Arkansas, and you guys are great. But I'm gonna go ahead and say this right now: if you could just have a day where you make half of your route setting crew make the predominantly hard moves with the left hand, because my right arm was so effing tired after like a week of climbing in that gym. Like, after a few days of climbing there, just worn out. And I think that's a big thing that people do. It's like that's like a huge tell for me, that like I can tell that there's like novice setters, or there's not really a setting structure or theme or anything like that. They're just kind of putting holds on the wall. Certain route setters and their names is always dominant on one side or another. And it's kind of a rookie mistake, in my opinion, especially nowadays. Like, we're far enough along in the setting industry and the climbing industry where like this should be addressed.
Yeah.
But I think you are correct. Like, creating your own problems is challenging. And I know, even for me, I've been making moves for kids forever. I still, when I make moves for myself, the very first thing I'll do is I'll make something, and then I'm like, okay, the question I ask myself is, do I like this boulder? Yeah, I like this. I'm like, okay, then this is not what I need to be climbing.
Yeah.
And then
the other way, you say, I don't like this boulder, and then you immediately move on from it or change it.
Yeah. So I gravitate towards like, I don't like this boulder. Okay, I need to get on it.
Yeah.
And that's like that's always my rule of thumb. And like, so when I'm setting for the kids, it's always like, half of this boulder I want them to like, the other half of this boulder I want this boulder is broken into thirds. 1/3 of this boulder has to be something that they don't like.
Yeah.
And I try to, as a rule, I always try to put that part that they don't like either the second or the third of it, because they got to get off the ground and kind of have a field day a little bit, but then it's got to turn on, because then that's usually enough for someone to kind of sink their teeth into it.
Yeah.
And
there's like that advantage of not, like with the standard boards, the ones that already have problems made up. There's that advantage to it of not thinking. That's good for both the beginner climber and the expert climber who's training too. Because, for instance, if you're, like the situation you talked about where you're like, oh, I don't like this boulder. This challenges me in an uncomfortable way, but I know that I need to do that. If you are an advanced climber and you're simply just checking off those benchmarks, that kind of allows you to do that in some ways too.
Yeah,
you're setting this goal of going, okay, like I need to do all these boulder problems, or I need to do filtering by style, for instance, on some of the apps. You can filter for the types of boulders if they're ranked by style or if they're tagged by styles. You could say, oh, I do not like Gaston moves, but I know I need to get better at them, so I'm going to only filter these boulders and only do Gaston boulders, things like that, for instance. So there's advantages to that, of like turning your brain off in terms of not needing to create, not wanting to think about it. All you have to do is hit the button and go. The lights light up and you do your thing. So there's again, that's a check in the plus column for most people, I think, for standardized boards. And there are a lot of, there's, I'm not incredibly familiar with, the tension board or the grasshopper board because it's newer, but the Kilter board app that I've played with a little bit, there's what is like 20,000 boulders, maybe more in there.
Yeah.
I'm probably under.
Yeah. Currently, my two favorite boards to climb on is the tension and the grasshopper. I like the tension board because I just like climbing on wooden holds. I feel like my skin just does not get so thrashed.
Yeah, no,
and
I like the tension board as
longer.
well. Yeah, I just have less experience with it because I have less access to it as well.
There's oh my god, I can't remember the name, but the original. There's a gym in Salt Lake. It was right down the street from where the World Cup was being hosted.
The front?
Yeah, the front, the OG front.
Yeah,
they have a tension board in there and a full size one, and it was the funnest thing to climb on. And I think I strictly spent most of my time on that. It was so funny. Like the moon board had like a line on it, and I just strictly stayed on that thing because, like I said, like, that's my favorite, hands down, and just like for the record. And, shameless plug, like this podcast is sponsored by Tension. So I'm going to go ahead and say that now. But
oh, really? Nice.
Oh, it is. But fuck all y'all. I don't even care because if you climb on wooden holds, your skin, you just save more skin.
No, I know. Yeah. I've known Will Anglin, the founder of Tension, for a long time. He and I used to work together and climb together in Maryland all the time.
Okay.
So,
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I can remember him making some of the first wooden holds and bringing them to Earth Treks and then climbing on them in his garage, or rather the shed at his parents' house there. So yeah, I've seen the beginnings of some of that before. So, and I think it's, that was a smart decision on his part to kind of, fill that void in the market of a training product that's, I think that's a big part of it, is keeping your skin in good condition. That's a huge component for rock climbers.
Yeah, because like I think it's one of the big things.
Skin maintenance at a high level. It's incredibly important.
Oh yeah, but like it's one of the biggest things that like I'm finally talking to some of these kids about it, but I talk to adults about it all the time. They're like, how do I not get these giant flappers? And the biggest thing I always tell people, I'm like, don't slam dunk
on jugs.
That's well, don't slam dunk on jugs. Like I do this all the time. I have people ball up their hand as a fist, and I'm like, how do you open a door? Like pretend my hand is a fist, and they like gently grab it with all four fingers, and they turn the knob, and they push. And I'm like, so do that with your climbing. And they're like, how do I?
Like it's dust in your hand. That's the only way to climb.
And all of them are like, when it's a jug, they're like, this is what you do. Just like slap your hand on it. And that's why you're like ripping it all apart. Like, I don't know. It's just, it blows my mind. But thanks, Will.
Will. I think they make amazing products. And I think they've done a great job to kind of fill a void in the climbing world.
Yeah. No, I think it's very important. So. And so, yeah, that would probably be like, my dream training dojo, barn / whatever in the house. Spray wall, grasshopper, tension, and then, mini CrossFit gym. Yeah. And then after that, I mean, like, you can send anything you want.
Of course. At that point, there's no excuses left, right?
Yeah, no, it's just me being a bitch. Yeah. Which, that's a whole nother topic in itself about avoiding
the podcast, right?
Yeah, that's like a whole nother animal. Yeah, but ultimately, I think what like this boils down to this is like you got to figure out what works for you, and I think you kind of stated it very well in the beginning. Like what is your intention? Like, really, what are you trying to get out of this thing? Because if you don't know that, I mean, you can sink a lot of money into something dumb or waste your time, or you just like there's just a lot of
Yeah.
I don't know.
And there's a lot of uses for them too. You know, like with a big enough spray wall with enough holds, you know, you can adequately climb or train for route climbing as well. I mean, this is what the first applications that I learned about for spray walls were for training for routes, essentially. And I mean, this was
How so?
well, so my introduction to spray walls in general, for like using them as for training, was through the Spanish coach David Macia. He's actually the coach of Alberto, the guy who won the gold medal. He's very decorated coach. He used to coach Pachi Usobiaga, Ramon Julian.
Oh, Coach Patchy.
Yeah, he's. I mean, he has a Idumaran.
Wow.
Yeah, he has a very robust record. So I, you know, one way or another, I kind of learned about him and his training, and this was more than a decade ago. You know, seeing pictures of him training in these small, dingy gyms with a wall just covered in holds, and they were training for lead competitions and for outdoor climbing, but you know, just doing circles. They were just doing 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 move circuits in circles on these small boards, you know, sometimes just even like 10 by 10 or 12 by 10 and things like that. And, you know, resistance training in a way that was maximizing the space that you have, essentially. I had the chance to work with him, you know, again, this is probably 11 years ago now, maybe more. We flew him out to Maryland, and he worked with us for probably a week or so, and that was kind of the first time that I was able to actually talk to someone and learn about it in that regard. There wasn't many people that I know of, at least in the U.S., that were really doing that kind of training at the time. I think maybe, you know, here in Texas, they were probably doing it at the time, some, and you know, I can maybe Seattle, maybe Claudio might have been doing it at that point. I'm not sure, but it was pretty new from my understanding at that time. It was like actually just the concept of a spray wall at all. I think for a lot of people, they just were like, well, it's just a bunch of holds on the wall. Like there's
makes sense.
Like, what do I do with this? You know what I mean? Which is, again, maybe going back to the whole idea of route setting for yourself a little bit. But anyway, yeah, that was I mean, back then they weren't training for bouldering competitions. At least he wasn't. You know, David, when he was training them, he was.
Can I grab you to move it a little bit closer to you? You're just facing me. No. Let me help.
Like this? Oh, yeah. It's more centered now.
You're looking at me.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to get some.
Don't eat it.
I don't put the microphone in my mouth? Are you sure?
I mean, you can do that, but
I had
Cheyenne's
dinner
gonna be pissed.
It's okay. God.
Oh my god.
So yeah, that was that was my introduction to using, you know, a spray wall and a training board in that way. And then kind of the first iterations that I built and trained on were kind of like more symmetrical boards, to be honest. Like
Really?
yeah. I mean, probably around the same time, or maybe before, maybe a little after or something. You know, companies like I think maybe it was eGrips that had developed one. I think they developed some system holds, a system training board.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think it was eGrips. Yep. Yeah, they had a set of system holds that were designed to be set up in a symmetrical or mirrored pattern.
Yeah. Wow, man, you're like ripping cobwebs off the brain here. I haven't seen those in years.
I'm trying to recall things that are buried deep within
psyche. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I can remember building a system training wall. Initially, it was symmetrical, and then it kind of evolved from that point.
I think we're going to see I'm willing to bet money we're going to see a resurgence of that kind of thing coming out of a lot of people. Like it's kind of like systems, like mirror boards. Like I think we're going to see a resurgence of that. I'm like willing to bet money on that.
Yeah, that was so. I was Tension has their board, I believe.
Yeah, they have a mirror board. It's good. Like,
that one was good.
That was what was in Dallas forever.
Yeah, that was the one I built. Yeah, it was the faux tension board. We ordered all the holds well, not all the holds, but I ordered a bunch of holds, and I don't even know if the tension board as a concept really existed then. It must have. I don't know. I can't remember anything.
It was probably an
But
experimental
anyway, I made my
stage.
own, and it was a symmetrical one, and it was
Yeah.
But the grasshopper board, for instance, too, that was another one where I was initially skeptical of the idea that it was kind of symmetrical or mirrored. But I was pretty happy with it when I climbed on it. Actually, I thought it was still very versatile. It was much better than I thought upon first impression.
I mean, I'm
Just
not
'cause
gonna
I
lie.
had some bad experiences, or it got stale for me. Those types of system
I can
boards
see
in the
that.
past, they became stale for me quickly. So I was pleasantly surprised with that.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I definitely had my skeptics about it when I first saw it because I was just like, Then when after getting on it and then really kind of like having a nice long session on it, I got to have like 30, 45 minute session after getting warm, kind of going ham, and I was surprised as well. I was very surprised that the misconception is the holds don't have to be bad to create challenging movement and to create even grabbing decent holds in a very, this is a prime example, like the movement that Roman made for you. It doesn't have to be gnarly holds. If the movement is challenging, just sticking the move is still hard, and you're still going to learn, and you're still going to get better.
Yeah.
You know? And so, yeah, no, I would definitely agree with that. Yeah, that's kind of, yeah. So kind of going back to that training that you were doing with him. So that was your first introduction with spray walls, kind of using them more for rope climbing and rope circuits. Cause that makes sense. Cause we used to have like mini spray walls, the first spray wall actually at Dallas gym was actually downstairs, right when you go to the right side of the canyon or the rope side. That first section of the wall actually used to be the gym spray wall. That was the whole massive site back in the old D-Rocks days. And we would do arc training on it all the time. 3 minutes on, 1 minute on, 1 minute off, 2 minutes, so on and so forth. And that's what we used to do all the freaking time.
Yeah.
And I think nowadays, the one thing I've noticed, and I got to give it to Kyle for this one, like, most gyms that I go to have the most rinky-dink spray wall, or they have this like version of it up that I'm like, it shouldn't even be there. Like, for example, like, you guys are wonderful people. I super enjoyed climbing at your gym, but the front, the OG one, their spray wall is a joke. Like it's just not good. Like, it could be so much better.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they really have a really nice wall. They have a really nice space for it, a really nice dedicated room for it. And it's right across from the moon board. But it could be really good. And it's just not. It's just like this forgotten child. And I remember when I was using it there, I warmed up in the gym, I ran around, but like the holds were so good on the spray wall that I just warmed up on that for like 20, 35 minutes. And people are like watching me and they're like, "Oh, what are you doing?" I'm like, "Well, I'm warming up." They're like, "Well, don't you want to just like do your hard moves on the moonboard or on one of the other things?" I'm like, "No, this is great. I can just like make up things that I don't like." And I think it was one person, this one other guy showed up, and him and I had like a 5-minute conversation about using that wall. And he's like, "You're the only other person I've ever seen using this thing." I'm like, "Well, how often does it get used?" He's like, "I think there's only like maybe 10 of us that actually use this whole wall." And to me, that's like, you're losing dollars on that space. Like, either, which I prefer you not to do this, but either change it to another board or put some more effort into it or create something, because like that's literally like you're losing dollars on that square footage.
Yeah, I think the issue here is understanding of how to use it. And, you know, a standardized commercial board you're going to get much more bang for your buck in a commercial gym out of that, because a lot of people don't really know how to make up the things that they want or the things that they need on a spray wall. If they have someone coaching them, or if they have a partner who's helping them, it's substantially easier. Even if you're literally just doing like a stick game, just pointing moves as you go, you know, which is, again, how I started too. It was like, yeah, okay, we'll just keep going. 25, 26, we're going to go till you get pumped and fall off. You know, that was initial spray wall experience for me was just like, you're gonna mix. Oh, so this is gonna be steel oak now. Is this what we're going with?
Yeah, we're gonna go steel. Why does that sound? That sounds like the name of a band.
Yeah, that's
Something you would hear at Bonnaroo.
That's my next album.
Steel oak. You have to play the steel guitar, which is very hard to play.
Yeah, yes, it is. Of course, now I can't remember now, but yeah. So that's maybe for commercial gyms. You know, that's the hard part. I think is that they oftentimes they build these spray walls. Oh, this is gonna be dangerous. Go.
Just take a little sippy sip.
You know, they kind of cancel each other out. I thought it was going to be harsh, but it's actually...
Yeah, no, that was actually quite nice.
It mellows it out a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was definitely less of Joe's, more of the other one.
Yeah.
Fair enough. All right, sorry.
More Japan. No, it's okay. I'm musing in a different direction now. I'm not totally sure where I was going with that, but... Just that I can see why it might and often does come across as a wasted area or a waste of space for a lot of people. Especially like if I were a manager or a gym owner, I would go, yeah, I see like 4 people on that wall a day.
Okay, so but like, how would you, to the layman listening to this, like how would you encourage them? Are there any rules of thumb? Like I gave mine, but like, are there any rules of thumb or anything that someone can do to like when they are trying to make these problems and they are trying to do this, like how should they go about it?
Don't do it by yourself. I would say is the first thing, if you can get away with it, is, in the beginning especially, is not training by yourself. I think it's easy to, again, set what you want or set what you hate. Or I would say like the level, like oftentimes it's something where you set something and it's either too easy or too hard. And you don't know how to adjust the level properly. That is a really common thing that I see with people who are trying to train themselves, is that they'll set themselves, a 10-move boulder problem that they want to try. And there's a common experience where either they pull on and they do the boulder quickly and they go, oh, that was way easier than I thought it was. I didn't really have to try.
Yeah.
Or they pull on and they can't get off the ground. And, every move is substantially harder than they think. They underestimated the type of movement, the holds, blah, blah, blah. There's lots of things.
Yeah.
And so it's easy to be discouraged, I think, in those kind of situations. You end up feeling like you didn't get the workout you wanted out of it. You didn't get the experience that you really wanted, the type of training that you wanted to get. It's maybe a little bit easier in some ways to make endurance circuits by yourself in certain ways, especially if you're solely climbing or training by moves. It's something that used to be common years ago, was like, especially for long endurance climbing, was like, I need to do X number of moves today. I need to do 1,000 moves or something today.
Oh, I remember
like
that. Because people were like, Adam Ondra does 1,000 moves, or it's like 3,000 moves a day or something like that. Like there was someone, I don't know. I remember someone saying that
this
to
was
me.
common, especially, a decade ago, maybe even a little bit less than that, is that people would give these goals of, like, I can remember, Patchy talking about him climbing like 10,000 moves per week kind of thing, or just these goals that were, again, more based around long endurance, more applicable to routes, competition climbing, which has changed a bit. It's certainly not solely about endurance anymore for rope climbing either, for lead competitions. So it's easier maybe for someone to jump into that kind of world though and train, a more general endurance climbing on that level. So I would say, like, if I'm, if I were going to the Red to climb, for instance, say if I'm like, okay, I want to go and, I'm training to climb, Bohica in the Madness Cave or anything in the Madness Cave, where essentially the most important thing is my fitness.
Yeah.
My ability to climb at a certain level for a prolonged period of time. Maybe a little bit easier in some ways to train on a spray wall and get fit in that regard. Doing lots of longer circuits, doing 15 or 20 moves 3 times in a row, repetitive things where you're just building the resistance, so to speak.
So that kind of brings up a funny thing that, I've heard this argued before. Like in the red, you just need fitness. In rifle, you need beta. So
more true than it isn't. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anywhere in the country that you can think of that is like a good mix of both? Because I know, like in my experience, like definitely red. I would agree. The red, you need fitness. Rifle, you need beta. And like, I would say like El Salto is somewhere I've climbed where like you need a little bit of both because some of the routes are like pretty straightforward and you can get that, and some of them are just like, some of them are cryptic, some of them are real cryptic, and it's just like these like really stemmy moves all of a sudden to these kind of like real dynamic things going on, and then you're like, next thing you know, you're like straddling a 2-foot just for a break. And so it's funny, but like in America, and for those of you who don't know, El Salto is in Mexico, right outside of Monterrey. Said that a little weird, but where in America would you say is like a good mix of both?
I don't know. I mean, for sport climbing, like, America doesn't have, in my opinion, it doesn't have amazing sport climbing the way that Europe does, for instance.
Why?
Just maybe it's the type of rock, it's the geography. I'm not sure exactly. I mean, I think, I'm not saying that there are some great crags.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's still stuff to be explored.
But I think that there actually is probably better bouldering overall in the U.S. than there is in terms of, this is, again, everything's subjective. I'm just looking at this.
Yeah, I know.
In terms of, where I've climbed, I would say that there's maybe more variety of a higher quality of bouldering than there is sport climbing. But there are areas that are really defined in certain ways. The red, really defined by fitness. Yosemite, for instance, is not a sport climbing crag. It is a everything crag, but it's, I would say, primarily big wall, traditional climbing, more what it's known for. So even if we say rope climbing versus bouldering, we don't necessarily have to say sport climbing, because there is a lot of good trad. I would say that there's, for instance, traditional climbing has a much deeper and richer culture in America than it seems to have in Europe.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
There's a very rich culture of alpinism in Europe, but not so much for trad climbing. And a lot of that, I think, is just maybe the types of rock doesn't lend itself to that much crack or natural features that are naturally protectable.
Have you done a lot of traditional?
I've done a decent amount. I mean, it's been a long time since I've plugged gear. I think that's actually close to a decade now since I've placed any gear.
Do you have a favorite
type of climbing? Or
no, not favorite place and type. I imagine you like the boulder more.
So almost all the traditional climbing I've done is on the East Coast. The Gunks is very nice, especially
Classic.
if you are interested in climbing a lot of moderate and lower end stuff. Although I will say, beware the plus grade at the Gunks. 5.9 plus could mean literally anything. There's some routes that were put up there many decades ago, and the plus could mean a very hard boulder problem. I will say that.
Yeah,
there were, it's just
I've heard that.
It was a different time. There were things where they would go,
it's a different age.
This one move was really hard on the route. You read this in the guidebook. So there's a hard crux at this, and it does not give away the type of a difficulty that you're really facing the way you would if you're on a 5.9 plus sport route, for instance, in a more modern crag. I think, for people that climb in and around Dallas, a lot of them have climbed at Horseshoe Canyon, for instance. Climbing 5.9, 5.10 there.
Fluffy grades.
Very, very different experience than climbing in the gunks, for
Yeah,
instance.
I would call that the fluffy grades.
Yeah, and just a different style of climb. Even if you're looking, even if I remove those outliers where like there's a 5.9 plus that has like a V7 boulder in the middle of it for some stupid reason. Or, well, not stupid, it's just the way the rock is, the way the climb is. It's anyway. It's a different time, a different world. So, but I think the gunks is a amazing place for traditional climbing in the U.S. Obviously, the bastion would be Yosemite. I've never climbed there. Personally, it's
beautiful.
It's a black mark on my record as a climber that I still have not been to Yosemite.
No, don't worry, it's not going anywhere.
I hope not.
No, I mean it's a lot of granite to get rid of.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of very good traditional climbing on the East Coast.
No, I mean, there's a ton.
North Carolina has some great traditional climbing.
dude, like one of my standing goals is I want to do Glass Menagerie, which that's a proud line. I want to aid it first, get the beta, and then I want to try and do a ground ascent and like just piece it together. I would love to take a season of just like, I don't know. I imagine for me, I would imagine it'd take me about 3 weeks, 3 weeks to a month to kind of like put it together, kind of piece it together, and then hopefully get a send at the end by the end of it. Yeah, to do it, because I mean it's a proud line, and it's also, I think it's one of the kind of like the gold standards to do if you want to go do hard lines in the valley. Yeah. And going from there, my favorite place to climb for trad probably is Unaweep Canyon. Unaweep, Casey Blum, the man's an asshole, in every nicest sense of the way. A lot of that stuff he put up, he did on aid and just gave it a grade. And so, like, I've climbed a lot of routes there, and that's probably hands down, because it's nice. It's got a really good amount of face trad. It's got some flaring stuff. It's got it's weird, and it's like it's almost 3 different forms of granite that all kind of conglomerate there. And Unaweep itself is actually it's a really beautiful place because it means a river with 2 mouths. So the river actually flows in 2 different directions from that way. So it's like it's a really gorgeous place, but it has a very special place in my heart for climbing there, because it's not for the faint of heart. I'll put it that way. Like, one of my favorite routes there is probably called Denotement, and it is not for the faint of heart. It is committing. It is doable, but like you kind of have to go in it you kind of have to go into that place climbing with the mindset, I'm in it to win it, because if not, you're leaving some gear behind. And so, but I like that. That's kind of like, I mean, that's just the style of climbing I like. Like, I like things that are bold, a little desperate, things that you have to agree. You have to commit and agree with your partner before you leave the ground. Like, we're going to get this done today. Don't get me wrong. I love the other stuff that's cushy and fun, but I gravitate towards climbs where like we're making a firm commitment that like this route is going down today. Yeah. That's cool. Yeah. So I need to up my trad resume quite a bit still. There's a lot that I haven't. Do you want to?
Yeah, I would like to at some point. I don't have the like particularly burning desire at the moment, but I will say that I am certainly a lot more curious now about mixed climbing. And
oh yeah, that's fun. Shit's the jam.
I'm very interested in doing some more alpine routes, and so it requires more diverse skills. It requires me to become more comfortable with that, with traditional climbing again. And
are you wanting to do alpine like snow and glaciers, or you just wanting to do like actual alpine, just like face climbing?
Both. I would like to do some alpine rock, but I would also like at some point to do some alpine mountaineering as well. Yeah. So alpine mountains, a little bit of a double down there, but I'm interested in doing different things that I have not had a lot of experience in. Even, I've done some multi-pitch climbing, not a lot, nothing big, nothing more than a half day, that kind of thing. 7-8 pitches maybe at most. So I've never done anything truly big, so to speak. I've never done any true alpinism or mountaineering, things like that. I've done some, I've done a few 14ers, but they were ones that do hiking, nothing,
Yeah, no, I get
nothing
that.
that required technical climbing or things like that. But I'm interested in doing it because I love the environment. I love being in that kind of position and feeling. And I do have I don't know. I have a desire to suffer. I'm pretty good at I'm pretty good at endurance, to be honest. I wish I had forced myself to do it more in the past, because I found that I actually have a pretty good predilection to allow myself to suffer for a prolonged period of time, which is
You're
nice.
on the right podcast, Sends and Suffers.
Oh, that's right. Oh, God.
Yeah, dude, it's an
Did you?
omen. It's funny. So so I want to first give the caveat. The story I'm about to tell, I do not encourage anyone to do this in any way, shape, or form. I was young and dumb. So I'm going to go ahead and say this now. I'm young and dumb. But do you remember when we took our first setters trip?
Arkansas, yeah. Yes, I remember this, yeah.
And Chris and I got a little shitty. And Chris was like, I just want to climb trad. I was like, all right, let's go. And then Chris was like, we're going to do this route. And he's like, I want to do this route. And I was like, Chris, we're going to do this 11C. And he was just like, what? And I'm like, yeah, you'll be fine. And he got up, and I don't even remember, but he like did the first pitch, kind of like it was a single pitch, but he was like having a knip shit. And he's like, we're not going to do this route. And I just remember putting on my headlight, taking an extra shot of whiskey. We were already pretty sauced at that point. And it was this double splitter. And I just like led the whole thing, got up and brought up. And Chris was just like suffering through the whole thing and going through that.
Yeah.
And then I remember I was like, you want to go up? And you were like, absolutely fucking not.
No, I was in no position. Also, my recollection of that was more so that Chris was absolutely terrified belaying you, because you would just get to sections on the route and you would just go, I don't think I can place gear here. I'm going to keep going. And Chris would just look at me with a, pure terror in his eyes. Like, why are we doing this right now? This is a terrible idea. Which is, probably a classic experience that a lot of climbers have had at some point in their life. If they do this long enough, that they are in a position where they're second guessing everything that put them into this situation that they're in right now. But
yeah.
yeah, I mean, yeah.
Oh my God, I forgot.
Decisions
about
were
that.
made,
Yeah, it's funny. It's like you say that, and I also think like that's like a really true thing. Like you kind of have. I think that's the big thing with trad climbing that I think a lot of people don't. I think a lot of people I've coached and trained, and a lot of people get hemmed up on. They're like, well, I gotta place a piece of gear every body length. I gotta do this. And it's more along the line, like, like the flow is going really well. Once you get a little resistance, plug some gear. But I think I've been in that situation a lot where friends of mine, I've said that same thing where people are like, why didn't you place gear here? I'm like, there wasn't needed. And I'm not like running it out to be dangerous or anything like that. But I definitely remember saying that. And I definitely remember, and Chris went up there and he was just like, why didn't you place gear there? And I'm like, did you think you could place gear in that spot? And he was like, no. Like, I'm not going to stand there. And in my mind, it's more dangerous to stand there for like 10 minutes just trying to screw around and get my feet tired and my fingers worn out and just look up and I'm like, there's an obvious place I can place a piece of gear up.
Well,
It's
that's certainly
way more
true. That
dangerous.
the longer you wait, the more doubt will build. That's absolutely true.
Yeah,
and the more you can find things to go wrong, find ways to sabotage yourself in certain
Oh,
situations.
time
like
is
that,
energy. Time and energy are like, especially on big trad routes, time and energy are an equation, and they constantly go into because the more time you spend, the more energy you lose.
Yeah,
but
finite
the more
resources,
energy, the more energy you exert, the less time you have to be on the wall. So it's really this like balancing act between these two things that you kind of have to keep going all the freaking time. That was a good trip.
Yeah, that was fun. I think that was 7 years ago, maybe?
Yeah, I was about to say, wow, that was, it was, what, who all was on that trip? It was me, you, was it Logan?
I think it was actually just the three of us. Because
Was it? No,
Yeah.
there was someone else there than the three of us.
I don't know. Maybe we met somebody there, but
I want to say someone else was in the cabin with us. There's 4 of us in that cabin. I remember 4 or 5. Cannon was there.
Was he?
I think Cannon was there.
I don't know. You could convince me, but
I don't know. One of them will correct us when they hear this.
yeah.
Oh my God. Well, sir, I want to bring this to a little bit of a close here, but I definitely want to do a recap with you at some point in time.
Yeah.
When you're in Salt Lake. But I definitely want to give you an opportunity. I don't know if there's any shout outs or anything you want to say, hello to anybody. And then also the question I always like to ask is there, how can people follow you? Or how can people search you? Or if you want to remain a ghost, you can just go full like Ghost Recon style.
My license plate number is no. Yeah, no. I don't know that I have much to promote at this moment because
You should promote yourself. I mean, you're freelancing now.
That's true. I am going to attempt to do some more freelance work with myself. I have done quite a lot of coaching, route setting in the last couple of years as well. I've done quite a bit of instructional courses for both coaching and route setting. And that's something I'm definitely passionate about and interested in doing more. So, yeah, people can contact me at their will if they're interested in, learning more about these kinds of things, or if they would like to solicit some advice from me. I am on the internet.
The interwebs.
The interwebs, yeah, the world wide webs. It's just, yeah, I mean, I don't do a ton on social media, but I do have it on Instagram at least. And yeah, I don't really have an agenda or any kind of, shout outs at the moment, but shout outs to whoever wants to hire me in Salt Lake City, I would say, if you're in need of a coach or a route setter, or simply someone to wax philosophy about things that no one really cares about,
I mean, someone cares about it.
Someone cares.
Yeah, someone definitely does.
Yeah, I mean, I have a very limited skill set, but I am passionate about those skills. So I would love to continue to be in this industry for many years to come. Let's say, sure.
Actually, one more thing before we sign off here, but like, what do you think are the 2 biggest changes in the industry commercially from a gym standpoint, and just kind of maybe like overall from when you started till now? Like, what are the 2 like obvious things? Well, maybe more of that, but is there something that stands out to you that's like, this is the biggest change that I've seen?
Well, probably the first thing that comes into my head is maybe the barrier to entry is a lot lower than it used to be. When I first started climbing, well, I mean, I tried climbing when I was really young. I did like a Boy Scout thing, and but the when I was I don't know, maybe I was 19 or something, the first time I went to a real climbing gym, and the atmosphere was much different back then. When I walked in, it felt very, very elitist in a lot of ways.
I would agree
much
with that.
like, I came in and I wanted to climb, and there, it was, well, do you know how to belay? Like, do you know the knots? And no, not really, but I'd like to climb. I'd like to learn. Nope. Come back when you know how to do it. That was really kind of the attitude, at least my experience. When I first started out, is that there was a very high barrier to entry. You essentially had to have a mentor.
Mm-hmm.
You needed that experienced mentor who knew what they were doing to teach you how to climb, the rope systems, how to not die, how to all this important stuff,
Yeah.
There were very few classes. There were very few opportunities to learn, in a commercial setting, I would say. And that has changed drastically.
Yeah.
I mean, pretty much anybody with a pulse can walk into a climbing gym now and get on the wall pretty quickly.
Yeah. Agreed.
Not to say that it's necessarily less safe in any way, because, there are countermeasures that have happened as well in terms of the safety in climbing gyms and things like auto belays and whatnot. But yeah, that barrier to entry into climbing is way different. It's much less of a, exclusive rebel club. That was the feel of it. Not only was it kind of elitist, but it was like, you know, you felt like you were almost like breaking the law certain times you're climbing.
No, I know
like
exactly
you were a
what
misfit.
you're feeling.
You're not supposed to be doing this. You know, you're not supposed to be outside throwing ropes over cliffs and climbing them and things like that. And that's changed a lot. It's the expectations and the way that people see climbing outside of the hardcore community of climbers has changed a lot, you know?
It reminds me of the first time I went to a climbing gym and volunteered. They were teaching me how to like wash the holds, and this guy was smoking a cigarette and washing the holds with muriatic acid. And I'm like, this is not safe.
Yeah.
I was like, this cannot be okay. And he's like, yeah, just pour the acid in. It's okay. We're great. And I'm like,
yeah,
okay.
like you should. Someone should do a comparison gallery, a photo gallery. They should do the Stone Masters versus the Olympics. That's what they should do.
Oh, that's
they
good.
should do alternating slides between 1970s in Yosemite with 2021 at the Tokyo Olympics.
They're not. Oh my God, it's like
not comparable.
No, it's
I mean,
not.
there are there are things that are, but
I mean, this is like our ancestors. This is like our great ancestors before electricity is on. They're going to be looking at this like, what am I looking at? Like, this doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
I mean, there'll be a small correlation, but for the most part, yeah, it's funny. Yeah. Wow.
So obviously, I can't, I can't say that I have experience being a stone master or living in that period of time. But yeah, we've come a long way, even since I've started. You know, and whatever, coming on, I guess around 20 years of climbing or something like that for me, and it's just the feeling has changed a lot. It doesn't feel like a. You can still, the thing is, you can still get these feelings in certain ways. Like if you want to be a dirtbag, you can still do that.
Yeah.
And that can still exist, and that can coexist with climbing in the Olympics.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I think that both of those things are great. Both of those things are climbing. And both those things should be celebrated. You know? I think it's awesome that there is that much diversity within the sport, within the life, the lifestyle, quote unquote, of being a climber, that there's a lot of variance in it, and you can kind of make it what you want it to be. And that soul still exists in a lot of places. So
yeah, no, I would 100% agree with you on that, because there's a lot. Climbing, as you said, has changed in a lot of that, and I think if you go to some places, it still hasn't changed. And I think that's like the funny part about it. Like for me, the sport is changed so much, but you can still find places in America, which blows my mind. Like there's a small climbing gym in Jasper, Arkansas. Jasper. It's not Jasper, Missouri. There's a small, I can't remember the name of this town, but I'll come to me later.
Mm-hmm.
There's a small gym in Missouri that they're only open to certain days of the week. It's whenever the owner wants to get up. Mm-hmm. And it's like this small little elitist gym. And yeah, that still exists to this day. But I agree with you. Like that is probably the thing. Because when I first climbed at Stoneworks back in the day, I remember they had not, I think they were only teaching people how to do the figure 8 knots, but they had only been teaching people for a few years. Because I remember when I went in, a guy was just like, okay, like I haven't done this too many times, so I'm going to teach you how to tie this knot. And I just remember thinking in my head, I was like, is this a business?
Yeah.
But
yeah, I mean, I can remember, when 95% of the people I knew refused to use a gree because they were convinced that, well, first of all, they were convinced that, you don't need a gree. It was just sort of a Luddite thing where they're like, no, come on. The ATC is fine. Like, you don't need the gree. And then, of course, it evolved into, well, if you use the gree, like, you're going to stop paying attention. You're not going to be safe. You're going to drop your partner. You're going to, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
And now Self-arresting devices are the standard.
Well, yeah, and even some gyms have now even banned ATCs and tube style devices because they're just not interested in people making mistakes with those.
Yeah, no, it's a conversation that's come up in Summit quite a bit. Yeah. It's like
I was shocked actually when I first moved to Texas. The idea of having the carabiners pre-tied on the ropes. I had never seen that before I moved to Texas.
I remember the first time you and I sat in the league cave, I belayed you on an ATC and you asked me, you're like, you know how to use that? I'm like, I know you won't die.
Yeah. So there's a lot that's changed. Just the attitudes, I think. There's a lot that's changed, but a lot that's, that's stayed the same in a lot of ways. I think it's just the attitudes is, it's a lot more people in climbing. The demographic of people that are climbing has changed drastically.
It's had a massive influx. I remember going into the gym back in Dallas Rocks days, and if there was 25 people in that gym, 30 people in that gym, I was like, it's too full. I can't rock climb. Can't climb.
Yeah.
And it's like now it's like 125, 200 people packed in that building.
Yeah, you go into a mega gym on a weeknight, and you're going to wait for a rope. You're going to wait to get in line on a route.
Boggles my mind. The first time I ever had to do that outdoors was in Rifle, and that's like one of the reasons why I swore that. I say I'd never climb there again, but I always climb there anyway.
Yeah.
But like it boggled my mind having to do that, and so that's like why now I still, personally, I like to seek climbing routes that are like off the beaten path, because everyone's always like, you like to go to climbing routes that it takes us like 2 hours to drive on a dirt road.
Yeah. And I like that too, and I think it's there's enough climbing. I'm not in the camp that the explosion of indoor climbing has ruined outdoor climbing.
No.
I think it's overblown. I think
most people I find indoors don't want to climb outdoors.
Exactly. I think that's angry locals that are upset when there's more than 3 people at their crag in general. Yeah. And yes, there will always be that off the beaten path, secret crag, whatever that you can go to.
Yeah, absolutely.
You just got to keep digging.
Yeah. Well, sir, I thank you for your time.
Yeah.
I think
thanks for having me.
I'm psyched to have you on this show. And ladies and gentlemen, if you are looking for some world-class training, hit my homeboy up. And then other than that, I think you guys are beautiful people. And remember, if you're not suffering, I think you have to ask yourself, are you really sending at all? Talk to you later.
I hope you guys enjoyed this episode as much as I did reliving it. I was super excited to catch up with Ellis before he got out of town. And if you haven't already, please check us out on Patreon. You can go to mariostanley.com to find all the information. And remember, as always, if you're not suffering, are you really even sending at all?
Audio.